So we're here with Tanisha, and Tanisha is the executive director of Arise for Social Justice, based in Springfield. And she also is a regular True School trainer. She's done writing for social change and classes about effective meetings. Anything else? Have you? Those are the two mainly, and the writing for social change. Are you cracking up about like
meetings?
Meetings?
They weren't happening this way. So yeah, we're just adapting to all these changes.
I know. What's an effective Zoom meeting, right?
Well, it can happen at your kitchen table. It can happen in your pajamas. It can, I think that during this time we're learning a lot about what we were doing and the ways that we can do it now and what that looks like, which maybe some of that is scary because we're so used to what has been and holding on to that, and this looks totally different.
Yeah.
We're losing a lot of these structures. Maybe we didn't need them to begin with. So
And
here we
right, and that's scary because there's a lot invested in those structures for a lot of people. And so it's like, well, if we could get rid of some of them, that could be a good thing. And also people have to be willing to let them go.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, so we're just talking to True School trainers and touching in and wondering, like, during this, I mean, there's so much happening right now and specific in this week in the life of justice movements. We have Ahmaud's situation and I mean, sort of so much has changed and so much is the same and is heightened in a way in this time. And I'm just curious, you work in social justice, like that is your field, that is your life. And I'm curious, how has your relationship with that work changed? Has it because of the virus? Has your understanding of it changed? Yeah, can you just talk to that?
Yeah. I've actually been talking about this a lot this week because I think my own brain has come back online and been able to engage in these ways. And I hadn't realized just how much I had checked out. And trying to process all of the things like this is actually going on and having a different vantage point because it's like, okay, I'm technically running a business and I need to make sure that the business is okay. And what that looks like is so much different than the work of, say, my organizers or some of my social justice counterparts. Like they're concerned with what's happening on the ground in our communities, which I am too.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm running this organization and that has to be okay because if that's not okay, it doesn't matter about the organizers and just what that has felt like. And asking myself questions like, have I done enough things? Am I visible enough? When I fell off, so did the organization because I've been doing so much work in these spaces and going to meetings. It's like, well, how come Arise isn't taking part of this? Because I wasn't at the meeting, because I was like, what is going on and how do I do this? And then feeling this disconnect in a sense where I had all these great things happening before this kind of blew up. And that also had this impact. So I closed on my first home a week before this happened. And it's like, if it was some days later, I wouldn't have been able to do that because City Hall was closed and this agency that I needed was closed and everything just worked, which was good. And I'm excited because I got this going on and then I bought a new car and I'm excited about that. And it's like, but the world is on fire.
Yeah.
I'm okay, but they're not okay. So I'm not okay, but I'm okay. And feeling that and knowing that my experience as the executive director was becoming a heck of a lot different than my organizers, and trying to process that and feeling a level of privilege that I have never, and really like it was icky. It does feel icky, and trying to like come to terms with that and being in spaces to talk about, well, it is okay that you're happy and you deserve these good things. And at the same time, trying to support everybody else, right? And not feeling so othered or in this dynamic of like I have more and they don't have enough. right? So that has been a challenge. How we're going to do this work has also been a challenge because the model that we have in taking care of the most vulnerable in our community, they walk into a rise. That's just part of what happens. And now they can't. And so how do we still engage and connect and find out what people need and get them what they need? And you know, in the beginnings, there was this lack of information about what other people were doing. So it's like, okay, well, what's happening at DTA? Are they open? Do you have to call? What's happening? Because people come into our office and they need to know what some of these other organizations are doing. And like everybody was just like in this panic process, like we're all feeling it in these ways and trying to figure it out. And now here we are with a series of Zoom calls and, oh, we have this hotline number and you can do this, and figuring out things and just going through like day by day, like learning, you know, and the information is constantly changing, and wanting to be able to get out the right information and messaging that resonates with our community.
Yeah.
So it's like I like I said, I'm coming back online. I'm like, okay, I gotta do work. I gotta do this and make it make sense. Because if I just like stay in my head too much, there's an important piece that's missing, because who's advocating for the folks on the margin, like outside of those margins? And they are not included in mainstream conversations when we're not in a pandemic. So now they're really not included because we're in a pandemic. And seeing the gap, you know, and all of the disparities in our entire system, you know, it's on display like in this way that we've never seen.
Yeah. Like how, and the actual logistical question of how to include the people outside the margins in the conversation in pandemic time is like you said, you don't, the physical gathering, the physical space, the planting a rise in the middle of the neighborhood doesn't work anymore. So how do you virtually plant? I mean, that's part of your model, right? You were in this neighborhood where people needed you to be.
Right.
Like, so how do you plant yourself in the neighborhood virtually?
And socially distance and do these things, and that's the struggle. And then, you know, having such a foundation rooted in organizing, it's like, well, we can't do that how we used to. So is the new thing going to be everybody piles in their cars and the signs are on the cars and we're going to these places because we can't gather together and hold signs and chant and sing songs? And even having to wonder, is that the most effective way anyway? It's just what we've been doing. So this has forced a new level of thinking, like how do we do this? How do we have public outcry when the public can't get together? You know, and is it a return to the old of like everybody has to make phone calls and write letters and do those things, but then seeing how these situations are compounded. So I'm talking about writing letters. The Postal Service is being gutted right now. And that's part of this bigger thing where, as a political strategy, I gut the post office, I can get rid of voting by mail.
Yeah, right.
Somebody want to do that.
Yeah.
You know? and having to think in these ways, and it's like, how do I insert that into everything else that's happening? Because it's a part of it.
Yeah.
Because I think everything about capitalism and these systems right now is at its weakest point for anybody to tear it down and put something better, or to exploit it.
It's at its
make it work.
Point. So wait. So it's vulnerable to it. So you're saying it's like highly vulnerable to like change capitalist systems right now, and simultaneously highly powerful, or like highly vulnerable to like, or what's the dual thing there?
For activists and organizers and those of us pushing for change, I think it's at a weak point where we could kick it over.
Yeah.
Then at the same time, it's weak where something else could be inserted that's worse. Like if we're not paying attention to all of it, because it's like, I think part of part of the way this works is wearing everybody out. You're so damn distracted. There's a fire over here, there's a fire over here, there's a fire over here. And it's like at that same time, I'm gutting healthcare, I'm gutting the postal service, I'm gutting this thing and this thing and this thing. But we're just like, there's so many different fires. Which one do I tend to? And we can't tend to all of them. So how do we prioritize? And then there's even the bad feeling in having to prioritize. Like, what if the pandemic was at the bottom of the list? And what would that mean? Because at the top of the list is the preservation of democracy, to not have us wind up in a fascist regime. And because the pandemic is allowing for these ridiculous decisions. Like in Springfield right now, I had a Zoom call earlier with the reinstatement of 5 officers who are under investigation because we have a shortage of police officers, but you just graduated 35 graduates from police academy. So what are you talking about? But we have a shortage because they're sick with COVID-19. So using the pandemic as the reasoning for making these ridiculous decisions about other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and having enough bandwidth to pay attention and push back and say, yeah, no, we're not doing this even in the middle of a pandemic because that's not okay.
Yeah.
So how, like, now is the time, I think, to really be strategic across all organizations. Like, these are really interlinked issues. They always were, but like, I think every person who is marginalized in some way is under attack. Like, it's hunting season. Yes. And being real about that. Like, let's talk about it in this way. It is hunting season. So, I guess it's a lot. My brain has been whirling and going and just what do we do and how? And then, like I said, my own personal stuff with being, you know, the ED and am I doing enough? Have I been doing enough? The balancing of the personal versus the public and being in this role, and grappling with the amount of privilege that I've, I guess, amassed in a way, which is really weird. And I've been working through that and, you know, trying to find ways for my staff to be okay and for our organization to be in alignment with our values and what we're doing internally and externally. You know, so that's been a lot of things that were already in process of being taken care of. And then COVID just kind of obliterated all of that. And now I'm trying to get things back on track and moving in that direction. And that's looking like making sure that everybody is actually, you know, on payroll and not a 1099 employee, right? Because when the bottom fell out, it was like, okay, well, I really can't offer you any protections. Right. It felt really horrible.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, this is something that we need to do. Everybody needs to go on payroll. I don't care. Because then there was the support. So it's like, how can I expect you to go out and take care of community in ways that your organization isn't even taking care of you? That doesn't sit well. So working on those things, again, from an administrative standpoint that doesn't have too much to do with what's happening directly on the ground. You know, it's like, yeah, I want you to have PPE, hand sanitizer and all this, but how about not having to worry about your income?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so, yeah.
I mean, it has a ton to do with it, but it's the stuff that you're like, you just wish it was there in place. And like, you know, it's like the time you have to spend to do that.
Yeah, and having the resources, whether it's financial or intellectual. Yeah. You know, like I'm asking questions like, how does an organization go from not offering health benefits and such to doing that? Like, that wasn't in any of my classes, you know, I don't know. But I have been networking and finding folks who are like, oh, I can help you with that because that's exactly what I do. And I'm like, great. And it's just a matter of scheduling the Zoom meeting and getting this going. And these processes look so different now.
Yeah.
Because you're not going into an office or, you know, so it just feels different, but it still needs to happen. You know, so.
It's that tension of like having to be invested in the system as it is enough to be able to be, I guess, like agile when it falls apart. Like we're learning how vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're not in it in some way, but you want to also be changing it simultaneously.
Right. And and I have to dabble in it. Like, and
Yeah.
sometimes that's really hard. Like I can know that all these systems are broken, they do more harm than good, but yet I still need to be in them.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's more of it's a tougher balance now, or to find the balance, because I can really see just how broken they are, like all across the board, and it's scary. Like for example, knowing that there are folks who are experiencing higher rates of domestic violence because now they are quarantined with their abusers, and getting relief and what that looks like.
Yeah.
You know, I've got up close and personal experience, like witnessing, like, okay, so domestic violence has taken place, and going to the police and not getting any remedy, and like, is the court open? How does this look like what are the emergency things in place? And when the places that we would go to, they're also affected in this pandemic. So it's just like, oh my gosh, this is like a different level of WTF OMG.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then
Yeah.
again, organizationally, Arise has been the place where people go because they've fallen through the cracks at these other, spaces and places, and we have some kind of answer. And there was no answer. I'm like, I don't know. And the people that I would ask for answers, they also didn't know. And the people that they would ask for answers also didn't know. So it really was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been hard. And I had a conversation with someone just on a visual representation. I'd gone to the bank to make some deposits for Arise, and across the street is a TD Bank, and the line around the bank went around like 3 times. And it occurred to me, yeah, it was all the way around this parking lot, like around. And it occurred to me, nobody was ready for this. Public or private, nonprofit, nobody was ready. It didn't matter how big your organization was, how much money you had, like nobody was ready. Because when it came down to like immediately we have to close our lobbies and this thing has to happen and this thing has to happen. And it just created this backlog everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure out the obsession with toilet paper.
Yeah.
And, okay. But yeah, just seeing that, like how all of these things that allegedly ran so well immediately fell apart. Like just immediately. And it was
Yeah, how fragile it all is. I mean, it it really is fragile. And I mean, how good is the system really at taking care of us and supporting all people? It's not great. It's not.
No, because then the people that we're saying are essential,
right,
very same people that we don't want to pay better wages and do things, but they're supporting this economy right now, and as it limps along. Are folks actually essential, or are they sacrificial?
Right. That article, that essay.
I was just like, ooh, if that's not the question, because that's really what it is. And there are some of us that have to navigate going back to work and risking our health versus staying at home and, I don't know, losing our life.
Right.
And, what that looks like and what that says, this push to reopen the economy isn't so much about getting the economy going as it is not having the government paying in this way, and who's disproportionately affected. Like, yeah, I can work from home. I'm good. There are lots of folks I know that can work from home, but for the folks that aren't able to do that and they are on unemployment and getting these extra dollars to support them, it's disproportionately affecting Black and Brown communities. And it's like, nah, I need to go back to work. The situation, I think, in Georgia, the barbershop's open, the bowling alley, this and that, but I can't go toward the governor's mansion. Why?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think we're getting the messages about whose life is valuable and why. I think we're also getting the message about who actually really drives this economy, who benefits the most. I mean, we always knew about the 1%, but we really get to see the 1%, you know. So it's been a lot. It's been eye-opening on a lot of levels. Criminal justice, economic justice, housing, what that looks like. So no, you don't have to pay your rent. You don't have to pay your mortgage. And they're putting these protections in place. But what happens after? And I from the beginning was like, this is a setup. It just feels to me like a setup. Because in the
gonna come due, like all of that's you're gonna owe like not all of this amount.
Right. And then when you can't pay that, we're going to wind up in this situation where there's going to be all these foreclosures and all these problems. And who ultimately stands to benefit? Because now real estate is back on a blue light special.
Right. The big banks, the wealthy people.
And then they constantly get bailed out and everything else. And it just, the numbers, the finance, like seeing it, it's like, oh my gosh. And how do we really get rid of this? You know, and then knowing like that, I think there's also the desire to reopen the economy, because if we go far enough in this and we have to make sure there's an equitable system and this redistribution of resources, or no, like we can actually do this, we could never go back to what has been.
Right.
Like I think this is also forcing us to look at equity. And the closer like we get to like, we should be paying hazard pay and who's essential and like we wouldn't go back.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute, no, we can actually support our citizens and do this in an equitable way. And you have too much and these people don't have enough, and switch it. So it's like, no, we need to get the economy back going before they figure out that we can really live in an equitable way. Because if we get activated like that and really, like it has to come to fruition, it's never going to go back.
Because it'll be so much better.
Yeah. So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And, you know, what to stop us. And I've also thought about our impact to the environment, which has been really kind of cool, but then having to realize like we are indeed the problem. More wild animals 2 months than I ever. Like this morning I'm driving and I saw the Canadian geese with the little babies and stuff, and they're just like out on the street, like, I'm like, okay.
Crossing State Street there.
Yeah, just, you know, I think there was a skunk outside the other day in the daylight when I had to take my trash bins out, and I'm like, okay, you know, and it's, water is cleaner and air is better and the smog's going away. And it's just like, yeah, the thing that we decided we couldn't do and, you know, push to do our best for, you know, reversing climate change. No, we can't do that. We don't know how. And okay, so the world has stopped.
Yeah.
And it didn't even take that long. Yeah, it didn't even take that long. Right. So, yeah.
And it's connected to the economy, right? You put, I mean, obviously that's an obvious statement, but you put like the sacrificial workers back in and you open the economy, and that movement cycle just happens again in the same way. And we need to move, we need to be with one another. That part of the pandemic is not going to be permanent, but like we could move differently. We could restructure things. So, but
yeah. And like, I think being forced to do it, like, well, there's no options. Or I mean, I don't know, we're talking about a cost benefit analysis. Like, oh, if I open the government, I'm only going to lose like 3,000 people a day or whatever it is. But then it's like, what 3,000 people?
Yeah.
Who's people?
Yeah.
And is it worth it? And then if it is worth it, to who? And then we go right back into that thing of looking at the 1%ers who actually, whose life is valuable. So, and it's non-discriminatory in the sense like anybody can become infected. It's, do you have enough social capital to stay away for as long as you can? And that's the thing. You know, who has to go outside, what that looks like versus I can stay home, I can have my groceries delivered. Like, I don't have to engage in this kind of way. So it's looking at all of those things. And here we are.
Yeah.
It's leadership or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even that, and having a complicated dialogue about Joe Biden and his history. And it's like, okay, can we talk about that after? Because it has to be anybody but Trump. Like we can't. Like yes, he sucked and he did some things, but guess what? The other choice is this one, and we're not gonna make it. Like we're not gonna make it. And it's, again, how do we prioritize these things? Like I believe survivors, I worked with survivors and everything else, and I understand that piece. At the same time, if we keep this fool, we all gonna die.
There's the strategic part of it.
Right. Yeah. This needs to happen. It's like Joe isn't perfect. Yeah, but at least we wouldn't be dealing with this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not for forever, but it gets us away from what we have going on. And how do we have those conversations? How do we talk about this strategically and also honor the thoughts, feelings, and voices of survivors? And that needs to be part of this, and have them on board with the strategy part and not feel alienated that this person with their history is our only chance right now. So yeah, I got lots of thoughts and things. I don't even know if they make sense half the time, but this is where we're at.
Yeah, it's all interconnected, and that's why it's so overwhelming. Because it's like, where do you go first? What do you do?
Yeah, it's like that's important, but that's important, and that's important. Like it's all on fire, and
then it's like, well, where do I go, right? Like,
yeah, like if I go over here, then I'm not looking at this, and I can't get to all these fires, and that's personal, but then it's also like from an organization standpoint, like what are the things that are going to matter the most to me? And I do take the personal to work. I live in this Black body. So police brutality things, they mean more to me maybe than the environmental stuff.
Yeah.
Just because.
Yep, because your body is perceived as a threat.
That's what it doesn't matter. You know, I'd actually just posted a little while ago a picture that I had taken in my office, maybe like 2 months ago, 2.5, 3 months. And I buy all these political kind of shirts. That's my thing. And this last one, it actually says unarmed, don't shoot. And I was in my office like this, and I posted the picture, and I posted it today because it just seemed appropriate, because we have to, I guess, wear that, you know, in a way that other people don't. And I understand that Blackness is the weapon, not the cell phone or the toy gun or any of those things, because when armed white men show up, the police don't draw their weapons. Those people get to leave alive because they're not perceived as dangerous,
right,
even if they show up with big guns. Right. And like the police fear for their life when they see a Black body, but they don't fear for their life when they see a white body with a big gun that really would end their life. So yeah,
something not right there.
Yeah, and you've been heavily trained, and then you are afraid of what? Like, because the training is intense. So what do you mean you're afraid? From somebody running from you? That I don't get. But the person standing right in front of you with their assault rifle, I'm not afraid. So yeah. And it gets it is exhausting. It really is. And what we do individually about that, and I think that part of that sometimes is why my brain was like, no, not today, because I don't feel like some of those things are for me to fix. Like, I'm out, you know, to do the education pieces and that emotional labor and the heavy lifting. It's like, no. I didn't make this system. You know, and other people didn't make the system, but if you benefit from it, then I think you have a responsibility. And I'm just like, listen, get your friends, do what you got to do, because that's not for me. So, yeah, and it is all connected. and having to discover that there are attitudes in some of your closest friends and allies, even your family, and you're like, wait, what? So that is a thing too that makes it really complicated. Like, I had no idea. Wow, okay. Yeah.
Well, I had a question. You don't have to. I was curious, but we can end it. But what made you? What was it? Did something specific happen, or was it just time passed that helped you sort of tune back in and realize like you had been tuned out, or in whatever way that was?
I still see my therapist in this capacity, and it's like sometimes I use that space as more like supervision for work because I don't get that. And like being able to identify that privileged feeling and how yucky that was for me and talking about that. And then I think just having a random conversation with someone else and it's like, but it's okay that you are okay and got happy things to talk about and everything else. And I guess coming away from the guilt of that feeling and then realizing like I'm going stir crazy because I'm not working. Like I need to be doing this. And then like, okay, it's time to get out of this funk and go to work. And because I think those two things, just having that therapeutic space, random conversation, and then my own, I gotta go to work. I gotta go do something.
Yeah.
So going to do stuff and like also craving that feeling of the routine that's familiar. Like I do go into the office sometimes. It's like I was sitting at my desk and I was like, I miss going to work. I need to do work. And really like putting myself back online, like so, and accepting this is where we are. Yeah. This is the way that you have to do it now, so go do it.
Yep, to that. And I think I feel it for myself too. It's like my hope in a way is that we're going to be here for a while longer because it isn't safe to reopen things. So there is that reality of like, this is where we are now and we're going to be here for some time and we need to figure out how to be here in a way that we're doing the work we want to do and we're making the changes we can make in this way, like creating a new system, really.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's the birth of something new, which I think it is, that's painful. Like childbirth is painful. And these are certainly growing pains. There's been this dramatic shift and we all feel it in different degrees because, I mean, to be Black in America, well, in the United States, already comes with the feeling, and then you slap a pandemic on top of it, and it's just like, okay, I'm buried now. And then there's also the weirdness of it's not safe to go outside, but we're outside, or some places you go into, it feels normal.
I know.
And then other times it's like, this is like the Twilight Zone. Like on the highway at times where I know there should be traffic.
Yeah.
Nobody. And I'm like, where are the people? Or you've been in spaces, like I've been to New York lots of times, and it doesn't matter if it's high noon or 2 a.m. or whatever, it's always busy. Times Square it's a madhouse. And to see the video, and I'm just like, you never tell me that there's nobody in Times Square right now? Nobody? I can't even imagine, even though I'm seeing live footage. It's just like, there's a part of me that's like, that's not real.
That's not real. That's not actually a good.
That's not real. No, they have it blocked off and they're just like, this is looped footage, but there's like crowds of people because it's never empty.
Yeah.
So it's hard to grasp because the familiar, like it's always busy, it's always crowded, and I've never seen it empty. And then it's the panic about that and the unknown, and then human beings hate uncertainty and we like to gather. So now you're telling me I have to be uncertain and I can't go be with my people.
What am I supposed to do?
Right. And it's like, On Easter Sunday, I was sitting at my girlfriend's house and we were watching. I was channel flipping and I stopped at BET and it was live streaming from the Potter's House, which is TD Jakes. It's a mega church, Black people, and it was live. And I was like, wait.
Wait, are they live gathering?
They're in the church and it's packed and the culture, like, you're not going to tell Black people that they're not going to church on Easter Sunday. And there it was. And I was just like, oh, this is not going to be good. But again, the thing, and and even this push now, I just saw an article and it was like the pastors, petitioning Governor Baker to allow for church. And I'm like, okay, see, this is two things.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just one thing. It's church on Sunday is economics.
Yeah.
And especially when it was Easter Sunday, that's
big money.
So, because you could have church anywhere. Like I've been participating in services online, and it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. But the offering basket got to go around a few times, so we need you to go to church. Yeah. So I see that as being that thing, and again, it's really dangerous. But at that same time, it's like, but we are social beings, and going through some stuff, we want to go be together, and it just feels like it's just a mess because it's going against human nature. And are people taking it serious? What does that look like? Because again, some of the things are so far removed. Like when I see the video footage from New York and all these bodies and they order these trucks and everything, and I'm like, I don't see that here.
Right.
Doesn't mean that it's not happening. It's just hard to register as real.
Yeah. And also, we're not physically in all these different spaces. We're taking it all in through screens.
Like, what do you mean? Like, and it's that's a struggle for me with the amount of privilege and resources that I have. And I can understand I need to wear a mask and I get annoyed about that. But I do it. Yeah. But it's still like, is this really happening?
Yeah.
And then the conspiracy theories and everything else. And it's just like, I don't even know. And it's the thing you can't see. It's not like, okay, if you go outside and there's like armed snipers, like be careful. You might see a sniper. This is the invisible what? So I think it's really hard all the way around. And then the experiences for children, like I've got some friends with younger kids, and it's like having to explain like why you can't go outside. My ex-wife's son he was a senior this year. And it's like, this is just wonky. Like, and I was like, my heart breaks for you for all the things that you didn't get to do for your senior year, things that we were able to just take for granted. Like you couldn't even physically go to school. There's no prom. Graduation is going to be, I don't even know. And that's what it is, lots of things. And again, it feels like these first world problems. Like I'm really upset that I couldn't go to this gala and this event that I really wanted to have. It got canceled. Like canceled. So, but in the bigger picture, people are dying. So, it's like, okay, so I can't go get a haircut. It's okay. Yeah. People are dying.
Yeah.
So I guess this jumble of things and how, what is tomorrow going to look like? What is it going to bring? What new thing are we going to find out? I don't know if you saw the article where COVID-19 could possibly be sexually transmitted.
Did.
And I'm like, oh, this is a new level of something.
Yeah, I did see that. I was like, oh God.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
it just
25th level of Jumanji. It's what is happening right now.
That's one way to put it. Yeah. That felt really like, ooh, isolating.
What?
Felt very isolating.
Yeah. Like, what is happening? What has happened? What did we do? What didn't we do? Like, because, and then the killer hornets, like, outside. Like,
I'm like, no, I can't.
Like, no, I guess we're never going outside. So, yeah.
Yeah, but we will eventually. We will again. Those
Oh,
pastors?
I mean, I don't, and that's it. I guess I don't know, like, because
It's gonna, yeah.
when, how, what's happening in other parts of the world, like, how come we can't get it together?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's infuriating. That's the leadership part.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, and I was listening to satellite radio this morning on part of my drive, and there was a caller who was saying like that there was they were talking about the Michelle Obama documentary that just came out on Netflix, which I haven't seen yet, and how it was nice to see. And then during the Obama presidency, like you knew he was the president,
Yeah.
but you didn't see him all the time.
Yeah.
But like there might have been a briefing, this thing happened, but this is like every day there's something where like he's tweeting at midnight or 2 in the morning, like it's just nonstop.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's part of it too. Like it's like you wake up and it's like, what did he do now? Just relentless.
Yeah.
Like reality TV, I guess, in a way. Like it's always on. I'm just like, I don't understand this.
Yeah.
And he's got a hell of a supporting cast. They're like, yeah, give us more, give us more. So
It drives me crazy. I'm like, these people, where are you? Where's your orientation, your moral standing? Where's your, yeah.
yeah, like how are you okay with this?
Right. Right.
You know, I'm not surprised at what we're seeing because he showed us all along the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's not
and
just him. That's the thing. It's not just,
right, and all the supporting players. But I think that the Republican Party thought, well, he's going to get in there and like we'll just whip him in the shape.
yeah.
And I was like, nope, because he's the type where I could just imagine they would be in the Oval and they'd be like, but sir, you can't do this. You're the president. He says, no, I can do whatever I want. I'm Donald J. Trump. And I was like, that right there? Can't tame that. And that's probably how lots of conversations have gone, regardless of what it was about.
Yeah.
Sir, you can't say that. You're the president. I'm Donald Trump. That's bigger than being the president. And that's why it doesn't work. And they would never control him. But he showed that.
Right.
So,
right. It's not really a surprise. Yeah. Oh.
Like he mocked every possible thing where anybody else would have been disqualified as being a candidate. You have mocked the Constitution, you've mocked veterans, you mocked disabled people, like everybody. So yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised. We just here. I'm surprised it lasted this long. Once people like on the whole can figure it out, like and really see. And I think there's a part of me that wonders what would it take for an actual Trump supporter to really be like, I've been bamboozled. This dude is rocker. Like, what would he have to do? Like, you know, for them to admit this was a bad choice.
Yeah.
They don't. That is a testament to the power of white supremacy. Like, I will uphold this at any cost, even my own life, which, okay, because that's what's going to come down to. So, yeah, I'm just like, wow, that runs pretty deep. And that's scary too, but I understand like it's in the fabric of this country.
Yeah, we understand that, but it's still super frustrating because you got to disrupt it. It has to get clipped.
But you can't. So I've always said if you talk to an engineer or an architect and they have laid the foundation for a structure and they built it and they get to the top floor and everything and they're checking it out and they find out that the foundation is lopsided, what do? And I think there's only so much correction before the decision has to be made that this building has to come down and the foundation has to be taken care of because there's no fixing. And that's how I see our country. It was built on a lopsided foundation. It was started in inequality. And the corrections are the amendments, but you can't amend your way out of this. The whole thing, it's lopsided. That's how it was built. So it's always going to be crooked because the foundation is lopsided. Yep. The building has to come down.
Needs a new
foundation. And the foundation. Yeah.
New birth story. Needs a new narrative entirely.
Yeah. And part of that I think comes with telling the truth of the history of our country and those horrific parts, like not trying to erase them and tell a different story, like tell the truth. I really enjoyed the 1619 project because it tells the truth in these ways, and it was so necessary. And I think if we could do that on the whole, start to teach those truths, then we would get somewhere to the equality that the this country was founded on that promise and it just didn't deliver. Mm-hmm. So until we can do that, we're just going to keep doing this, and we know that this doesn't work.
Maybe there's a way. I don't know. Maybe this is me being just like really wanting to be hopeful, but maybe there's a way that like pandemic weirdness actually helps us to talk about history more honestly. I don't know why I'm making that link, but it could.
Because I would agree, because it's something that is so devastating where you can't, we've been here before, right? So about every 100 years there's a pandemic. I would argue the difference now is that we have all this technology where we could see almost in real time the effects, where in 1918 they didn't have this. There wasn't Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and Zoom and everything else. So we have some different models, like we can see this, and then we have to talk about it, and we're also on display for the world. Other countries, nobody lost their health care. It didn't take them forever to reach out and help their citizens, right? We're going to give you, $2,000 a month for 4 months, and everything is shut down, and make sure that you're okay. Other countries were able to do that. And then, the destruction of us being this superpower, and everybody's looking to us as the beacon of hope. And I'm like, nah, that ship has sailed, because here we are, pretty much a glamorous third world country, because we have homeless people, we have people struggling with having enough to eat, we have these major income inequalities, we have dirty water. Flint still does not have clean water. Those are the elements of what we would call a third world country. Everybody just has an iPhone, right? So that's on display. The number of people that lost their healthcare because it was tied to their jobs. And we say, how are we going to pay for this? But yet we bail out corporations without batting an eye. We could afford this. Like the amount of money that we spend on the military to guzzle up all the oil, which is why we're always going to fight anyway, to get the oil to put in the tanks and the submarines, and just going around in a circle, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And I am glad that our dirty laundry is on display.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, there's the opportunity. There it is.
Yeah, woo, you thought it was all great over here. No, we got some problems. And how dare us go to other people's houses and tell them what they have to be doing when it's like, but you have problems over here. Yeah. Take care of your own people before you come over here. And yeah, it's embarrassing. It is so embarrassing, but it's like, you know what? When you shine the light on the thing, then something can come from that. It's not hidden in the dark.
Well, that feels like, oh, you just froze a little bit, but I say amen to that.
Conversation amongst ourselves. And then, that's now, other people are talking about us and can have conversations with us and everything else. What are you doing over there? Because it's undeniable, and I think that certainly has a feeling to be a person from the United States and actually have to consider, besides my Blackness, going to somebody else's country and having them look at me sideways like, you're from America? What are you doing over there? So, it is totally, totally different. And I'm glad for that. Things change in discomfort.
That's right.
And all of us are uncomfortable right now. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't like to make change otherwise, really, unless we have to.
And now it's time because everything is uncomfortable, super uncomfortable.
All righty, cheers to that. Cheers to discomfort and enduring through it as much as you can, right? Like somehow finding creative space in it to not just flee it and go back to what's known. That's the challenge. I mean,
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think we all hunger for what was normal, but at the same time, we know that it didn't work.
Yeah.
It's almost like you realize like you were in an unhealthy relationship. And even though those things are familiar, you have to grow and heal and but that pattern, you want to go that way, but you're like, no, I can't go that way. I have to go this way now. That's where we are as a country. We have to develop some healthy relationship skills. You can't go back to this.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right, Tanisha, thank you so much for taking this time. And it's been really helpful for me just to talk to you personally and feels good. And
yeah.
So, all the best as you figure out all the things, and you're not alone. We're not alone, even though we're removed from one another.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people trying to do this work.
Yeah, and we're just all figuring it out because this is uncharted territory. So, yeah, I'm trying to have